Excuse me, ma'am.
What a pleasure to meet you.
Doug, we're going to follow you, Doug. This way.
Out of the way. Out of the way. Let's move. Move. If I touch you, you're in my way. Move out. I'm like, move out of the way. You guys are backing into something now. Come on. Move it.
So good to see you. Roll it. Senator Burris.
No, that's not an early inaugural parade. It's the Burris Circus coming to town.
Keep going. Give him some space.
Throngs of reporters engulfing Roland Burris as he made his way through the rain towards the Capitol.
It's just, it's quite a mess here.
It was chaotic, it was crazy, and in fact one cameraman slipped and fell.
Getting the very attention he was seeking in this act of defiance.
All right, spread out. Here we are.
Democratic leaders blocking Burris from becoming a senator tried to calm the chaos by trying to organize his entrance into the building, sending the Sergeant-at-Arms, an old friend from Illinois, to greet him. Inside, Burris was guided through the hallway, ignoring our questions as we broadcast the scene.
What do you expect to do right now, sir?
He squeezed onto the elevator to see the Secretary of the Senate to appeal her refusal to allow him to be sworn in. 20 minutes later, Burris re-emerged, his bid to be seated still denied because the Illinois Secretary of State has refused to sign his election certificate. Dozens of cameras and reporters followed Burris into the now pouring rain as he tried to cross the street and hold a press conference.
My name is Roland Burris, the junior senator from the state of Illinois. I presented my credentials to the Secretary of the Senate and advised that my credentials were not in order and I would not be accepted, nor will I be seated, nor will I be permitted on the floor, and therefore I am not seeking to have any type of confrontation. I will now consult with my attorneys and we will determine what our next step will be.
We have presented our credentials to the Secretary of the Senate per the law. Our credentials were rejected by the Secretary of the Senate. We were not allowed to be placed in the record book. We were not allowed to proceed to the floor for purposes of taking oath, all of which we think was improperly done, and it is against the law of this land.
Barely an hour later, the Senate was gavelled into session.
That you take this obligation freely.
Vice President Dick Cheney administered the oath of office to newly elected senators, including Vice President-elect Joe Biden, who will soon resign from the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, meanwhile, reiterated the rejection of Burris.
Mr. Burris is not in possession of the necessary credentials from the state of Illinois.
That's nowhere in the 17th Amendment. It doesn't exist. And so Senator Reid has the power and the ability to accept Senator Roland Burris today.
Is it your legal ruling or finding or belief that he has been appointed, Burris, and no matter who is subsequently named by any subsequent governor, his appointment holds? Is that your belief?
That's our belief. We believe
it's indelible.
We believe that the governor did everything under the law that he had to do.
In other words, this appointment holds no matter whether the guy gets impeached or not, whether Blagojevich goes or stays.
That's right. There's no vacancy, is what we're saying.
Okay.
He is appointed.
So the Democrats would be well advised, if they had your legal background, to just accept this appointment and not slow walk this thing and don't try to wait for another appointment.
That's correct.
We have a situation here that we've had a rule in effect since 1884 here in the Senate, that for a person to be appointed by a governor, you have to have the signature of the governor and the Secretary of State.
Now, there is a serious question that has to be asked and answered, and that is whether the Secretary of State, Jesse White, an African-American in Illinois, needs to certify the signature of Rod Blagojevich for the appointment of Roland Burris.
Were you surprised at how that played out?
Well, they could have seated him without my signature.
What do you mean?
Well, my signature is not necessarily required in order for the Senate to place the gentleman in the seat that he was appointed to by Governor Blagojevich. So if you understand that, then you can understand what the Senate did to Roland Burris yesterday.
What the Senate did to Roland Burris yesterday?
Oh, yes. They played a little bit of a game with him yesterday. They have the authority to put the gentleman in place.
A strange development today also in the Illinois State Supreme Court. They ruled that the state Secretary of State does not have to sign the paperwork for Blagojevich's appointment to the U.S. Senate.
In the U.S. Senate, decorum is always followed and mistakes are rarely acknowledged.
Mr. Biden of Delaware, Mr. Chambliss of Georgia.
But in an abrupt turnaround, Senate Democratic leaders led by Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid began talks on Wednesday about swearing in former Illinois Attorney General Roland Burris.
First, one of Washington's biggest controversies appears to have ended with a whimper and not a bang. You may now call him Senator-designate Roland Burris. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and Illinois' only actual senator at the moment, Dick Durbin, this afternoon issuing a joint statement that read in part, the Secretary of the Senate has determined that the new credentials presented today on behalf of Mr. Burris now satisfy Senate rules and validate his appointment to the vacant Illinois Senate seat. Senate Democrats apparently coming to the only possible conclusion and saving some face in the process.
Even President-elect Barack Obama, who just 2 weeks ago firmly opposed the idea of seating Burris, appeared to have a change of heart.
That is a Senate matter, but I know Roland Burris. Obviously, he's from my home state. I think he's a fine public servant.
The abrupt switch by Obama and other Democratic leaders came in the face of tense pressure.
He showed up in the rain. He stood there under those umbrellas, under the Washington downpour, and demanded what was his right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is what I tell people, especially young people. If you want something, show up and demand it. Make the other guy or the other woman say no. Don't you say no for them. In that spirit, and recognizing that the Senate leadership is still holding up his seating, I hereby bequeath the first ever Hardball Award to Roland Burris, the man who teaches us all that hardball lesson, that important hardball lesson. Don't be afraid to ask for what you believe is yours. There's Richard Cheney, the Vice President of the United States and President of the Senate, swearing in Roland Burris. Let's go to that live.
Discharge the duties of the office on which you're about to enter. So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President.